All right. I think I've got everybody that's coming along. Okay. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the September 20th, 2024 Trinity County Collaborative Group meeting. We'll do a quick round of introductions and roll call on the Zoom there. So my name is Kelly Sheen. I'm the district manager for the Trinity County Resource Conservation District and part of the facilitation team. Jim Spear is in Kentucky today, so he is not going to make it to facilitate for us. So I'm taking on the honors, and I will pass to my right.
Terry Sheen.
Diana Sheen, interested public for years since the beginning.
Very good. Thank you both. I'll start with my upper left-hand corner here. Bob Morris.
Good morning.
Morning. Arnold Whitridge.
Here, fully present.
Fully present. Thanks, Arnold.
That's good to know.
Larry Glass.
Morning.
Morning. Joseph and Susan Bauer.
Here.
And good morning to all.
Morning. Dylan Kirkley, could you also give a little intro for yourself, just real quick?
Hi, I'm
New
Dylan,
face.
and I am. Oh, hey. So I'm Dylan, and I am new to TRC, to the RCD. I am the program manager for the environmental compliance program.
Awesome. Thanks, Dylan.
Welcome.
Eric, could you do the same for us? Eric Bruce. Another new face.
Good morning. I'm Eric Bruce, currently working as a forestry lead technician, and I've stepped up into the forester. I'm super excited to be taking on this position and joining a long future with the RCD.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Kristen Lark. You with us, Kristen?
Yes, sorry,
Maybe
I'm
on mute.
having some technical difficulties. Good morning.
Thanks for joining us, Kristen. Ben Sundahl with the Shasta Trinity National Forest.
Hey, good morning.
Ben is, so those of you that may not know, Ben is acting district ranger for the Trinity River Management Unit.
And South Fork Management Unit, the whole west side, Kelly.
All west side. Thank you for my stamp.
Oh,
All right, Jerry Cousins.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Glad to be here again. Glad to be anywhere again.
Thanks, Jerry. All right, David Colbeck with the Natural Resources Division of Trinity County.
Morning, everybody. David Colbeck, as Kelly just mentioned, Natural Resources.
Awesome. Thanks for being here with us, David. Bethany Llewellyn with the Trinity County RCD.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Bethany. Chris Cole, NRCS.
Good morning, Chris Cole, District Conservationist, NRCS, Trinity County.
Thanks for joining us, Chris. Ren Winter with Trinity River Lumber and Crowell Creek.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Thanks for joining us, Ren. Christine Jordan, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Good morning, everyone.
Thanks for joining us, Christine. Monique Ray, Shasta Trinity National Forest.
Hey, everyone. Good morning. Partnership Coordinator over at the Shasta Trinity. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining, Monique. And I think Jennifer Mata, BLM, might be our last.
Good morning.
Morning, Jennifer. Thanks. Did I miss anybody? I think I got everybody. All right. I think that's everybody for now, and we'll see who pops up as we go along. Let's see. Are there any proxies today? I don't know that we have any voting issues today, but any roll call proxies? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. I am hosting both the Zoom and facilitated meeting. And Larry Glass, you had an agenda check or an additional modification to the agenda.
Yeah, I thought it was a good time to review what it takes to get collaborative support for something. There's a lot of people that are new to the collaborative over the years, and you know, we've supported a few projects along the way, but you know, anyways, I think just going over what it takes to get support from the collaborative.
Okay. See, collaborative support. We'll go ahead and add that right here, kind of at the beginning, right at the bottom of the follow-up items. Does that sound good, Larry?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So we'll add that in after the U.S. Forest Service Plan of Work meeting. Okay, very good. Any other additions or revisions to the agenda today? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Any comments or revisions to the collective memory from the July 19th meeting?
Kelly, it's Jerry. I have one somewhere in the minutes or the collective memory. Marla's new partner, AI, missed something. It had to say that the next set of 6 cameras from PG&E were to be installed by the end of the week. It actually was the end of the year.
6 cameras. To be added, you meaning like installed and,
yes,
and functional?
PG&E wanted them installed by the end of the year. And we'll talk about that later, about the permit process with Ben.
Okay, very
okay.
Yes, very good. Okay, very good. And yeah,
I'd like to make a proposal.
Yes, go ahead, Arnold.
I propose that we give Jerry Cousins an award for reading 21 pages of verbatim minutes.
I thought it was 35.
Or 90, whatever it is. I didn't even look this time.
I barely look, but I have heard it's now AI is kind of doing the transcription.
Yeah, we actually purchased a service for doing AI transcription. We did try a few different options. We also, to follow up on a previous request, and I think we brought this up previously once, but I'll reiterate it. This transcription service that we have bought into is going to be very effective as far as picking up kind of the verbatim discussions that happen during these meetings, but are not very good with either person or place names. So we're still having to go back through, but it takes about half the time to do that. And with regard to the length of the transcriptions, we've tried to feed that into do summaries, and I'm not sure whether or not this service does that, but the other services that we've tried have basically said, you need to summarize this description in order to be able to do a summary of it, which is pretty much not doable. So and not effective. So we'll be looking into the summary features of this new software that we're using, and we'll see what we see if there's any possibility of doing that. Again, part of the issue that we run into is the subjective nature of minutes and what some people might find being important being dropped and vice versa. So that's kind of the state of that. But yes, we are working with an AI program to actually capture the transcriptions. And then Marla is going through and actually, she's been doing this now long enough that she kind of knows the players, generally has a good understanding of place names within the county and project names, and has been doing her best to capture that. And I think that will, this one was a little bit rushed. So I think that there may be some other things that are kind of known issues within this particular transfer that we should be getting better as we go along.
But Kelly, I thought there was conversation several meetings ago that we were going to use the real intelligence of Jim Spear to read through them and kind of bullet point out the meaningful items.
Again, I had a conversation with Jim, and he's reticent to do that because he is not, there's so much that happens in these meetings and so many things that are discussed. He doesn't want to inadvertently drop anything that might be important to others. So I can have a conversation with about it, but he was reluctant to do that. And I think he set on to do that at one point and then became kind of more concerned with that as a potential, loss of fidelity, I guess you could say, for the minutes. So we can revisit that once we have a better understanding of whether or not there's some level of functionality in that with the AI part of it. But we'll see where we get to.
Okay.
If you talk to him again, please encourage him that the draft minutes don't have to be perfect. We'll make them perfect or perfect enough. And so
okay.
If we had 2 pages instead of 35, it would be really, really helpful.
Okay, noted. Yeah, appreciate that. We'll see what we can do. Thank you for your input on that. Any public input? I don't see anybody that we don't expect to have on this meeting. So any public input? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and jump straight into our follow-up items from the previous meeting. The top of the list will be, I spoke with David Colbeck about this earlier this week, about giving us a little report out on the Good Neighbor Authority Agreement between the county and the U.S. Forest Service and how that's going and where that's at. David.
Sure, if I just jump into that now. Thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, excellent. So I believe that this request came from your last meeting. It's in the minutes. So in what I'm about to report out on, if I'm missing the mark from what you're hoping for, just please let me know. And of course, Forest Service, Kristen, Ben, Monique, if you want to jump in and clarify anything further, feel free to do that. So quick overview, apologies if this is redundant to what many of you have heard before or already know, but for the sake of the whole group, the Good Neighbor Authority Agreement between the Forest Service and the county essentially was executed, I believe, late of 2023 after some negotiation between the County Department of Transportation and principally Terry Jones and Monique and some grants and agreements. We call it the GNA because that is the master agreement, but really functionally, we're talking about the SPA, which is a supplemental project agreement, which is basically where all of the work items are spelled out and the budget is laid out. So we have a SPA 1, and now we have a SPA 2, a recent amendment to the existing SPA. So it's a whole combined list of activities within the GNA agreement. It was quite a bit of work to lay all of those out. It was fairly complicated in the timelines that we had, but we were able to execute that. The first SPA, again, that basically came into effect at the end of last year, was for roughly $1.4 million. And that is for 7 different categories of work. The first being the use of the county tub grinder, hand piling slash, construction of fire lines. Sorry, I'm looking over my shoulder at my cheat sheet. Addressing noxious or invasive weeds, road work, specifically county road work on Forest Service parcels or leading to the Forest Service, the use of the county Bailey Bridge, and then engineering services provided by the County Department of Transportation. So all of those work items totaled roughly 1.4 million. Our most recent effort to amend that for the SPA 2 included principally the same work items, although road work specifically was not allowed in terms of, say, rolling dips or road reconstruction, road maintenance, because of the type of funds that were coming through that second infusion of cash. So briefly, overall, that totals 1.9 million, more or less, in just round numbers. The work to date, the county reports out to the Forest Service on a quarterly basis. There is about $250,000 of reimbursement that has been requested by the county. And much of that work has centered around the use of the Bailey Bridge down in Forest Glen, if you're familiar with that, in terms of August fire complex response, as well as a number of hazard tree felling and brushing in a number of locations along Route Xenia, High and Palm Road, some Scotch broom removal, I think near the Petty John area, and kind of a long list of different road systems that the Department of Transportation itself has looked into. For my part, for the rest of those items, I have been working with the Department of Solid Waste for use of the tub grinder and looking to develop other contracts or capacity for those remaining work items, including noxious weed removal, which is basically focused on developing a location for disposal, a facility both in Hayfork and Weaverville as a spot for anyone out there who is pulling weeds to be able to dispose of those appropriately. So this is, I believe, a 5-year agreement. The SPA 2, as in the modification to the existing agreement, has not quite fully been executed, but it should be soon. And there you go. I can say that there is some work right now working in the August fire footprint in the South Six Rivers National Forest with Kristen's team and, of course, RCD, specifically with Bethany, to try to address some of those remaining hazard trees that have not been part of other Forest Service projects or county efforts. So with that, again, for the Forest Service to chime in as you wish or to ask or answer any questions.
Jerry, you have your hand up.
Yeah, David, how much is the SPA 2 worth? How much additional funds went to that?
1.5 million is in SPA 2.
Okay.
1.4 million is SPA 1. So that's a total of 2.9 million.
Nice. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for David? All right. Hearing none. Thank you very much, David, for that report out. That is very helpful.
You're welcome.
Is that pretty much what everybody was looking for with regard to getting sort of a general sense of how that's going? Consensus?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, perfect. This is very good, David. Thank you for Monique Gray. Perfect. Okay, I'm going to minimize that. Okay, very good. Moving on to the next bullet point, the Trinity County Collaborative Group letter to the Board of Supervisors regarding RAC appointments. Status update. So I made so this was an item that we took up in the previous meeting to basically provide a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors that they address Secretary Vilsack about the expediency with which RAC membership gets vetted. Because as it stands now, that it can last anywhere from, I mean, it can take anywhere from a year to 2 years to actually make that happen. And with the RAC basically being, its term is due as of, February of 2025, as my understanding. Is that correct, Monique?
Yeah, so all the current appointed members will reach their 4-year term, which is when they all expire. And that will be February of 2025.
And we've already, if the current budget includes secure rural schools and Title II money for RAC approval, that we won't see the next round of that until sometime shortly thereafter. Is that correct, Monique?
Yeah, so April would be hypothetically when the next round of funds come in, but right now we're waiting on the Secure Rural Schools Act reauthorization, which we're expecting to be authorized soon, but I don't have a hard date for that. But we're expecting sometime early in the new fiscal year, but you never know.
Very good. So there was a discussion about this at the rec committee meeting in July, and Monique had mentioned that there was some support internally within the local, I guess the Shasta Trinity or possibly the region, of potentially more localizing those authorizations of the RAC members. And is that correct, Monique?
So reauthorizing of the, sorry, I was a little bit confused.
I think
you mean?
I think you had brought up the possibility that that could be something that was potentially being thought about, or was potentially going to be recommended locally, like either at the forest level or at the regional level, which is how we got a hold of this idea.
Yeah, so some of our options for obtaining new committee members once all of our folks reach their 4-year term would be to reauthorize and re-nominate current committee members, but no matter what, we still have to do outreach and do our best to diversify our committee. So it would very likely not be approved without outreach. And if, there's people that have served and there's somebody that may be an alternate to that person that may have different qualifications, then we would look to try to diversify, but otherwise renominating folks is also really helpful, but isn't always recommended by our Washington office for various different reasons, but it's helpful for us in a more rural community where folks that have time to serve can be a little bit more limited.
Very good. Well, thank you for that. I just want to give a little bit of background on that. So the letter was drafted by Pat Frost. We brought it to the July meeting. It was authorized with a few changes to go to the Board of Supervisors. I made those changes and have outreach to Heidi and Rick Lutweiler to get it on their agenda, and as well as Trent Tothill. So I have received word from them that it should be on this very next supervisors meeting, which I believe is on the 1st of October. At which point that will be signed by the board chair, who is Rick Weiler, and then that will go off to Vilsack's office. So that's the status of the letter. Any other comments or questions about that? Okay, hearing none, we'll continue onwards with our agenda. There was a follow-up that was centered around the Trinity Camps project, which is a green timber sale within some of the campgrounds around Trinity Lake in the National Recreation Area. And the discussion had to do with taking, as I understand it, Doug firs versus pines, and because basically the mark that we had a look at the, I guess that was that the August field tour. It was pretty Doug fir heavy and not too heavy on the pine. It was suggested that an additional discussion on this issue was needed, and so we were bringing it forward as a follow-up item. To that end, Joe Stumadick from the National Recreation Area has joined us since we did our roll call earlier. Joe, do you happen to have any information on this topic?
So first of all, I want to just apologize for being late. Had some network connectivity issues, so appreciate that. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Joe Stubendick. I'm the recreation staff officer for Shasta Lake. Sarah Akridge is on leave, so I'm filling in her role right now. I think I know many of you, so good to see you all again. So I did talk with Sarah ahead of this meeting to try and make sure that we were on the same page and that I was relaying the information. Basically, the big takeaway that she wanted me to share with you, and it sounds like she's already shared it with others as well, is that the intent of that project is to maintain the largest and healthiest trees on the landscape, looking to support biodiversity regardless of species. And there's a location by location, might shift or skew how that looks. We're looking to build sustainability across the forest landscape as it's focused around the campgrounds. So hopefully that's not news from what's already been stated.
Very good. Thanks, Joe. Is there any additional clarifications or questions from the group about this topic? Larry.
Yeah, I think that if I remember correctly, this was brought up by Carol Fall, and she was concerned that there was a bias against Doug fir, as stated by the forester, Todd, that he considered Doug fir to be a weed species. He clarified that he said he didn't say that, or that wasn't what he meant. But that's what this was about, I think, was the concern that, yeah, that was the concern.
Yeah, and like I said, we're looking to keep the largest, healthiest trees regardless of species. I know Todd has a special way of his delivery sometimes that can come across kind of rough. So I don't know exactly what those conversations were in detail in the past. So
Arnold, you had raised your hand.
Also, I think Todd came across to me as saying that suppression was a sign of ill health. But my own experience as a sawmiller is that many Douglas firs were suppressed a long time. They were released by adjacent logging or fire or something and grew like gangbusters. So I think that if Todd thinks that suppression, current slow growth is a sign of ill health, I'm inclined to disagree as a general principle.
I think one of the
Slow
other
growth, it might be, it could be for various reasons, but it's not, I don't think it's accurate or appropriate to say if it's growing slow, it's no good, because I've seen the contrary. Personally.
One of the other points I think that I recall Todd making also with regard to this had to do with the fact that ponderosa pines are considered to be somewhat more fire tolerant or more fire resilient because of the nature of the way that they drop their lower branches, so they don't create so many ladder fuels, and they tend to have the ability to to take low intensity fires more readily than Douglas fir, which I think was what led to the comment about that being like Douglas fir being a weaker species, which I think Larry's correct. I think Carol took sort of some offense to the idea that Douglas fir, which is very prevalent in the North Lake area because of the higher levels of precipitation in that zone of the county. I think that was part of I think she bristled a little bit about that. Just because that's sort of the nature of that particular area. But that was kind of the other point I think that was being made by Todd, was just or the reasoning, I guess, behind that comment, as I understood it. Anything else, Joe, or any other comments from the group?
I don't have anything else to add. I mean, I'm the
We're
rec
still
officer.
on.
I'm not a sounds like Carol and Todd were having a conversation. Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, we're still on track to go out and take a look at the first unit after it's treated.
That is my understanding. That's the plan. And I will make sure to communicate that there's still an interest to do that.
And my understanding, Joe, too, was that the time, or may not know this, but the timeline had been pushed back a little bit, like they were expecting operations within Hayward Flat Campground in October. Is that correct?
I think at one point, yeah, I think at one point that was discussed. I think after the site visit in the field, I think there was an effort to reduce the amount of cut that was going to be going in play, and I think that delayed the schedule some. I don't know what that is. I'd be guessing, but I think delayed from October is probably still accurate, but I would have to confirm that. And I can get that back. I can dig into that and get back to y'all.
Very good. Thanks, Joe. Jerry, you have your hand up.
And Joe, I think it was also stated that the following units would not be treated until the review of the first one happened, even though apparently they're marked already, or some of them are marked.
Okay, I'll carry that forward too, Jerry.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, Tannery was supposed to be the second, was my understanding.
We were supposed to see the first one and learn from it before we moved on to the next, if I remember the conversation.
That's
Correct.
how I remember it, and I know that Pat and Carol are off traveling right now, but that was pretty important to them. So.
Yep. Okay. Very good. Okay. Anything else on this topic? Great. Thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right, next up, Tara had offered to report back to the collaborative group about the Shasta Trinity management review feedback. And I think that this would be something that Ben should be able to update us on.
Yep, so just looking at that bullet in the agenda, I'm pretty sure she's talking about the general management review the forest had earlier this year with leadership from the regional office. So every year the regional office sends out some of their leadership across the region here in California and conducts a general management review. And it was our turn this past spring. So what they do is they come up here, we do a little in brief on our current organization operations, and then that group of individuals will scatter across the forest and just basically do a pulse check with staff, and then also engage with our partners, industry, and our cooperators to see how those relationships are going. And after about a week on the forest, they head back to the regional office and digest all the information that they've collected. And then a month or so later, they send a report back to the forest with some recommendations and some timelines for us to meet those recommendations. But I'll just kind of go through a few things that pertain to this group regarding some of the findings. A lot of the recommendations were centered for internal to the Shasta Trinity National Forest, so I kind of won't discuss those. It's just some minor things that we just need to work on. But one of the key things for the positive side of things is, and I'll just highlight these, was employee enthusiasm, pride, and commitment to the mission, to the force of the agency, leadership and unit cohesion, capacity building. So we've been able to increase staffing over the last couple of years with the nice influx of funding. And I'll get to that later in my report out for the west side along the agenda. Capacity, I did capacity building, then engaged leadership with clear priorities and communication. So one of the things that really pertained to this group was the positives around engaged partners and volunteers. So the general management review team members met with several partners and cooperators. They expressed appreciation for meaningful, productive relationships with Shasta Trinity National Forest leadership and staff, basically the entire workforce. Partners are engaged in the work on the forest and want to continue to take on more work. Now I'm just kind of reading verbatim from their what they typed up. Partnerships, cooperators, volunteers have been vital to filling critical gaps, planning and implementing forest restoration, resilience, and public service work, and in fire suppression operations on the national forest. Partners communicated with the value of unit leadership as well as unit staff. So in a nutshell, one of our core identities for the Shasta Trinity National Forest is trusted relationships. So they were super happy to hear and see, not only from the workforce in the Shasta Trinity, but while engaging with our partners, industry, and our cooperators, hearing that same alignment in how well we've fostered, grown, promoted our relationships across the board, and kind of wanted to take that back to the regional office and share that with other national forests in Region 5 to kind of model that behavior and that relationship building that we've been able to accomplish on this forest. Just trying to scroll through the document here. The document was like, let's see here, 15 pages. So yeah, that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of it. Like I said, a lot of the recommendations on how to improve are internal to the forest. And as we improve those and meet those timelines and provide that data back to the regional office, not only is it going to be a positive benefit for the workforce on the Shasta Trinity National Forest on how we communicate and operate, but it's going to bleed right into how we foster and build our relationships with our partners, the local communities, and our cooperators.
Great, thanks, Ben. Bob, you have your hand up.
So Ben, several of us on this call were active in giving input that day. So are you able to share the 15-page recommendations with us or not?
Let me check, because the last email I had was internal eyes only, but I'll double check on it since it's been 6 or so months now. And then we have our action plan developed where we need to meet some timelines internally. So I'll double check on that. Then if I can, I'll send it out to Kelly for wide distribution.
Or perhaps if a portion of it is available for our eyes and a portion is not, just that portion that we could see, anything would be appreciated.
Okay, yep, I'll double check on that.
Thanks.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions for Ben on this topic? Not hearing any. Well, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Ben, for that. That was great to hear. And yeah, we would be, I'm sure, interested in seeing any of those results.
Yep, and
if they're available.
Yep, and just a huge thank you to everybody that participated with that GMR staff that came in and found that time to engage with them and communicate with them. Super beneficial not only to all of you, but also to us to just help build upon those relationships and find our strengths and weaknesses and continue moving forward with the good work we're doing on the landscape. So thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for including us. Okay, next up, U.S. Forest Service Plan of Work meeting, February 2025. I don't know that I'm familiar with exactly what brought this up, but is this something that Ben or Kristen can speak to? Possibly Monique?
Was this kind of like the Shasta Trinity, the Six Rivers, RCD, and maybe the Watershed Center sitting down in one room and talking about program of work across boundaries and what we have on our plates, Kelly?
This is Jerry. I don't think that's exactly it. I think we had reminisced that years ago, collaborative members had been included in the annual scope of work meeting. And it was just brought up again. And I think Tara said, yeah, we can do that. And the next one is going to be in February of next year, the annual scope of work. And I think there's going to be invites or inclusion of collaborative members to that meeting.
So that would have been separate.
Program of
Ben, were you at that meeting that we had? Because we had one meeting that Ben described already, and that we agreed was going to be like a quarterly meeting that was sort of internal to just the forest and like the immediate partners. And I think some of us that are on this call, like David Colbeck was there, and some of the folks that are, currently engaged with wildfire crisis strategy specifically were part of that meeting, and that was to be a rolling quarterly meeting. But I think that was separate from what Jerry, you were describing, because there was, when I first started doing facilitation of this group, there was sort of a separate committee that was basically attending program of work meetings with both forests. But then there was sort of some rancor that happened, and it fell off of most of our radars and became less fruitful. So I think there was a level of desire to re-engage with that process. So I think this February meeting that she must have mentioned was, I think, separate from this other more partner-led meeting or partner group meeting. That
I agree, Kelly. I think you're accurate in your distinction.
Okay. Larry, you have your hand up.
Yeah, no, I just was going to chime in. That's exactly right. We'd had a discussion with Tara about the way things had gone in the past and how we used to have these program of work meetings and help prioritize the various projects. She wanted to reinstitute that and talked about maybe doing it in February.
Okay, so that'll be something that maybe I'll follow up with Ben about, and maybe I'm not sure why she threw out February specifically. Is that a common time frame for program of work to be addressed, Ben?
No, I mean, we could talk about program of work right now, but we don't have the time. But on the Chef's Trinity, we had to put together our 5-year program of work for the forest and then for the regional office to show them that vision for the next 5 years. So I would say between the west side and Shasta Lake, if we set a date that whether it's February 25, we should be able to communicate and share with the collaborative group our 5-year program of work and what that looks like.
I think another reason for that was just to see how priorities merge, what the Forest Service priorities for the next year was going to be and what the collaborative thought was important.
I think February was picked because we knew we weren't going to be doing field trips in February, so that's why
Yeah,
I think it was.
Yep. I think you're right about that, Larry. That makes sense. Yep. Okay. So does that work, Ben?
Yes. Yep. February 25 will work.
Okay.
And then it'll give us time to kind of digest, and I'll talk about it more at the report out in a little bit on the agenda, what fiscal year 25 looks like for the Forest Service.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'll coordinate with you as that time comes closer, and we'll get make sure that we have kind of everything in order and shoot for that 3rd Friday, what would have normally have been the even month field tour date, as being the meet that that can be the meeting date. Does that work for everybody? All right, great. Thank you for that. Okay, and so for the added item that Larry brought up earlier, collaborative support and how that works. Is that something, Larry, that you want to speak to more immediately, or? Okay.
Yeah, no, I just thought it was good. There's a lot of people that are in the collaborative meetings now that aren't aware of the process, I don't think. So I thought it was just good to review it. There's been some projects like the pilot project, First 48, Acre Woods, all of which received this collaborative stamp of approval by a vote of more than 80% of the members. And those were approved by the collaborative. So there's a process, I mean, involving us from the very inception of the project, and then taking our input along the way, and then making the changes that are recommended by the collaborative. And then, like I said, then a vote of the collaborative. That's how the support, official support anyway, that's how it happens. And that has to then go to the supervisors, I guess, since we're just an arm of the supervisor.
Yeah, so exactly. I'll just follow up on Larry's comments with regard to the more specific, like, for example, the letter that was being routed to the Board of Supervisors. A topic came up, it was discussed, it was voted on by the collaborative group, usually with a suggested, verbiage for the letter. And then those recommendations are typically pushed up to the Board of Supervisors, and then put on their letterhead and signed off by them as recommended, typically by the collaborative. So that's generally how that typically works. Are there any other? Oh, Jerry, you got your hand up?
I think one of the cautions is that on field trips, it's hit or miss which collaborative members go. And as we're out in the woods and those people are there, that those people kind of nod their head and agree and say, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And then it's fearful that then the agency goes forth and says, well, we went out and looked at it and the collaborative approves of this project, and kind of implies the endorsement of the entire collaborative. So I think what Larry is describing is just the formality of how that has to come about.
Correct. Is there something that we should be doing for, like we've been obviously seeing a lot of, the increased level of field tours this year, we've been seeing a lot of different projects, and there is sort of an implied support to those, and we usually like one of our next topic, one of our next items will be to speak about the August 16th field trip. So, is that something that needs to be formalized or should be formalized as far as support of the collaborative for specific projects? Or is that, or is the work that's being done on those field tours and the support shown there and expressed there enough?
Well, maybe the onus needs to be on the agencies who's wanting to speak to the support of the collaborative.
Okay. Larry.
Yeah, I think a good example would be Big Ranch as it moves forward. We've been on several field trips now to look at it, and we're going to do another one, I'm sure. And the consensus about what's going on there is being formed, but it hasn't been reached yet. And at a certain point, when both sides are satisfied with it, then I think a request then from the Forest Service for formal support of the project would be the way that would work. Tara would, or Ben or whoever would come to the collaborative and say, yeah, we've worked together on this. We think we've ironed out the differences and we'd like official support of this project. But I don't think it's fair for the agency to say that the collaborative has supported a project if we haven't gone through that process.
Very good. Bob, additional comments?
It's been a while, but I'm pretty sure this is specifically addressed in our bylaws. Perhaps a quick check of that at some point might be in order.
Yeah, I can look into that piece, and then we can, potentially have a follow-up in the next meeting that confirms maybe how that process will work. And I guess to the agency, the agency folks on the call, does that sound reasonable? If we're going to move forward with that, does that sound like a reasonable request? Or because I think my recollection from more recent projects is that there's always kind of like all the pre-scoping work, but then once we go to scoping and comment periods within the projects, I think they're encouraging individuals to make comments, but I don't know that collectively we've made any kind of comments in that process either. So I guess what are the thoughts of the folks, Ben, Kristen, Joe?
Yeah,
I
no,
can chime in. Sorry, I'm working off my phone. I'm a little awkward today with this, but Kelly, you bring up a good point that I was thinking about as I was listening to Larry speak about those official comment, scoping and comment periods that we have. One thing that does is it gives added weight to having standing in the project record on the document. So not only is it beneficial to be able to describe the collaborative process within the body of the EA or CE or whatever the NEPA document is, but to also have those letters as part of the record for the NEPA analysis. So I think that there's places where we could fit that into our timelines, you know, when we have a project initiation letter and the ID team leader is working through, there's a schedule, we have so many days to do this and do that, to have that be a line item within the schedule of, you know, make sure we've checked in with the collaborative and are following that process to give all parties enough time to develop that support and work through the process with the Board of Supervisors, as Larry has described. So I would be in favor of that, and I think it would be very helpful. There's a lot of moving parts when you're a ID team leader, all the regulatory and, you know, law and all that you have to follow, and sometimes it can be easy to lose sight of stuff. So that's my input on that. Good idea, Larry.
Ben, anything additional to that? Thank you, Kristen. That's good.
No, she captured it pretty well with my thoughts.
Okay, great. So I'll look into the bylaws about whether there's any formal documentation of what that process looks like. And then if, you know, if we want to move forward with that, we can certainly, you know, make more formal recommendations or show specific support for given projects as we're moving forward. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay. Excellent. Okay. Okay, more generally, anything additional about collaborative support and what that looks like and how it works? Great topic. Thanks for the suggestion there, Larry. Appreciate that. Okay, next on the agenda, Trinity PUD power line clearing project. We placed this item here to basically give sort of an update. Jim Spear did follow up with Paul Hooser about this, and Paul at first was pretty supportive of making a presentation to the group about the progress of that, but then reached back out separately to Jim to state that, well, this may be better to do like once the document has gone to scoping. And they're expecting that to happen November 8th. So he said that he'd be perfectly happy to do a presentation at that time and then have a place to point to for comments for during that comment period, which I believe is, I can't remember if it's 30 days or longer than that. In this particular case, it may be longer than that. But so that was kind of the update with regard to that. So we will be hearing from Paul later about that particular piece. The comments here, and I'll just read it for the record: environmental review process nearing completion, updated project proposal coming out for public review and comment soon. And by that, I think what I heard from Jim was that they're expecting that to be November 8th. So by the November meeting, that will have passed, and we'll be able, that will have initiated, and we'll be able to get a more specific and finalized sort of version of what they're putting out to the public at that time. Is that acceptable to everybody? Okay, hearing no comment, then we will go with that, and that will be, we'll include that for the November meeting. I get a thumbs up from Jerry, so, okay, thank you. August 16th, field trip report. Is there anybody that was on that field trip that would like to speak to that? I think we touched a little bit on it with some of the comments about the Douglas fir and pine discussion earlier. I know that Arnold was on that field tour. Larry was on the field tour.
David,
I think
David was.
David Colbeck was on that. Anybody want to speak to that to that trip?
I can start it out and then other hopefully will join in. Arnold can correct me as he's very good at doing. We went to, I believe, 4 different sites and took a look at the different those different sites and the different conditions that were in each site. One was Boulder Lakes Road, I think was the
Yes.
first site we went to, and
That's
looked
correct.
at the conditions there. That was very overstocked, but very diverse species in there, and talked about what the prescription would be on that site. The other one that sticks out in my mind was the one that's called Ballpark. It was where we sort of wound up at the end, and that was closer to the lake, and the conditions that were there were very different than the other sites that we looked at. There seemed to be a kind of a consensus building about what was necessary at the various sites. But we did only look at 4 sites. I think we need to see more before we can really have an understanding of exactly what the project's going to look like, and more precise description of how they were going to be treated.
Yeah, this just for the record, again, I'm sorry, it took me a half a second to jog my memory, but that particular field tour was for the North Lake Community Risk Reduction Highway 3 project. That's currently being spearheaded by the National Recreation Area, and I think we got to 3 sites. I think we were going to stop off in Tannery, or no, it was near Stewart's Fork, but Pine Cove, but we didn't end up making it there. The 3rd site was Rainier Road, and yes, like there was a pretty broad variation between those 3 sites: the Ballpark, Boulder Lakes Road, and Rainier Road, and I thought it was a pretty solid discussion. I think we were able to get a sense of like this, just how kind of vast that scope was. And as I recall, they were saying that it was something like 13,000 acres was being planned on that particular project. So that was kind of the structure of it. Any other comments from anybody else that was there? Arnold? Impressions?
No corrections. Good news. The at the Rainier Road site, the Forest Service people that were engaged in planning and musing and scratching their head were quite interested in collaborative members' views on feathering, extending, taking our shaded fuel break recommendation, but extending it much further in order to achieve the desired effects. And so that's the topic in play. I think people that were there agreed it's probably a good idea in that case. But that was the big issue I remembered that they were interested in and seeking comment on, figure out.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. That was a big one. And we still need more information on exactly what that would look like.
And that's what
Yeah.
I was going to comment on too. I was on the field trip, and feathering seems to be the new term that keeps coming up on all the projects. Taking the original pilot program prescription and then moving it further out where the topography allows. So I agree with Larry that that just needs some more investigation with everybody. So we're all in agreement when we use that word, feathering.
Yeah, and I know that we talked about this early last year when we were also going out and having a look at some of the treatments that had been done previously in the Weaverville Community Forest, and we talked about feathering up to like 1,000-foot buffer, like off of, say, a road, with the intent that my understanding of it is that the intent of that is that it's meant to really like slow down any potential fire that's moving through a forest, up to a feature like a road. And then with the heavier treatment nearer to the road so that, it would potentially stop a crown fire, say, before it reaches a feature like that, was my understanding of what the reasoning behind sort of growing that out. Bob, and I'll get to you, Mom, in a second.
So I agree with Kelly about his last comments, but the feathering other folks had talked about earlier, it had to do with extending treatment. The feathering portion that I got from it was it's more intense treatment in the first 150 feet or whatever that number is, and then it's lesser as you go away from it. That's the definition of the feathering in my mind. And yes, it was
Correct.
to blow the fire by the time it gets to our intensive treatments.
Exactly. Yep.
And the third side, the Rainier Road, was the most informative, I thought. And that north aspect, Doug, for us, kind of what we're used to dealing with.
Yeah. Diana.
So does the term feathering mean, there was a lot of discussion on cleanup as well. Is that what that means? Is the cleanup, but with what's already on the ground? It's not, that's a fire hazard as well. So I just wanted to confirm that. I guess feathering means standing trees, but it seems like there was a lot of discussion on the cleanup, that especially on Boulder Lakes, not Ballpark, not Rainier so much, but Boulder Lake.
So there's two things usually happening with the planning of these projects, as I understand them. One would be the inclusion of, a green timber sale with, as was described earlier, like the heavier level of treatment being closer to, say, a road or a feature that is being utilized as, say, a larger break, with the treatment grabbing less as you're getting further away from that. So that's the feathering piece.
Okay.
With regard to the actual, like a green timber sale component of the treatment that was being prescribed.
That's what I originally thought.
But then with other follow-up treatments for dealing with the fuels reduction, that's more on the ground, and that's dependent on site, like site
Boulder.
specifics.
Yeah.
Bob, go ahead.
Okay.
At the Rainier Road site, we did talk about Roger Yeagel's old pet peeve, the fuel loading tons per acre on the ground, in addition to the standing timber. And that would be the cleanup portion, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, great. Any impressions from the agency folks that were on those tours?
So I'll speak up as for Sarah. Again, I was not on that tour, but one of the things she did ask was just to try and get the overall impression from the group, from the folks that were there, if that was an effective format and how that shook out and everything like that. It sounds like, if I'm hearing input from the group, that yes, but maybe we could get a little more. Is that accurate way to describe that? Or if there is specific feedback that we can continue to make these sorts of field tours more effective for what we need to do, I'm all ears for that.
Larry, do you have a comment to that effect?
Yeah, no, we were really appreciative for being brought out at the early phase of the whole thing. But yeah, there needs to be more follow-up and more clarification. There were a lot of terms being used that weren't all that clear. And then we need to report back to the rest of the collaborative of what we saw. And then, yeah, have another subsequent meeting about it with you all.
Okay. And then since that project, or since that field trip was largely focused on that North Highway 3 project, I did want to take this opportunity to share the I just was talking with Callan, who I believe she was on the field trip. She let me know that they're anticipating the scoping for that project going out towards the end of the month of September. So within the next week or so. And then we're anticipating having a public site visit as part of that scoping process approximately 2 weeks after that letter goes out, so that the idea would be that that people have time to digest that letter and then bring good questions, comments, feedback, input, and then still have another week to 2 weeks following that field visit to get any kind of formal scoping and input in. So just wanted to get that on this group's radar that is coming out.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Okay, any other specific impressions or comments with regard to the Highway 3 field tour?
I have one, Kelly, for the group, and just to
Yep.
give folks an update. Hopefully I'm not breaking up and you can hear me okay.
We can hear you. I was actually going to ask from your perspective how that went.
Okay. So the Fish and Wildlife Service has had really great early involvement in streamlining. That's our standard practice when working with the action agencies on project development to try to help minimize impacts to listed or proposed species. So the field trip on August 16th was one of 7 that we've had so far this summer with the ID team, as well as just with the biologists that are working on the project from the NRA. So we've identified areas of concern with occupied spotted owl sites and where treatments were proposed, and have had some really good field discussions with silviculture and fuels, as well as Sarah, the line officer. We've provided our recommendations on treatment modifications. And there was a field trip yesterday that looked at portions of the river complex area that burned. So the progress in terms of service involvement and getting consultation going early has been positive for this project. The field trip on the 16th with the collaborative, I was basically in listening mode. And I do believe that more field review, is definitely needed with folks from the collaborative. And hopefully that can occur, after the project is scoped, but also, within the timelines that are set now, because I do believe that that the forest, and Joe or Ben or Kristen can please correct me if I'm wrong, but are you required to sign a decision within a year of scoping, or is there flexibility around that now?
I think direction from the Washington office is within a year, but we can apply for extensions.
Okay. So that's helpful. And then just again, it's been a positive working environment for this project, as well as the Trinity Campgrounds project and High and Palm. And we're looking forward to also working more with the Trinity River Management Unit on the Big Ranch project.
Great. Very good. Thank you very much for that, Christine. Okay, anything else before we move on? We're getting a little behind the schedule. Hearing no other comments. Okay, well, we had listed out here field tour schedule update. We also had one for lower down, but I think we'll just go ahead and, since we're talking about it now, I'll give a little bit of an update. So the August 23rd, originally scheduled August 23rd Big Ranch Community Risk Reduction Project got postponed. I'm under the impression that we're attempting to move that to Friday, October 4th. The next actual field tour is going to be this next Friday, September 27th, Junction City project. And I kind of wanted to get, I was going to reply to an email that I saw floating around, but maybe Ben, you can answer this question. Who's taking lead on the September 27th Junction City project field tour?
I'm hoping, and I have to reply back to her. I'm hoping Randy Paris from the Watershed Center, since they're going to be taking the lead on NEPA, and we're there for support. So, and maybe Dave has a comment on this as well. And hoping they'll take lead and we'll support. But if we need to take lead, we can take lead. But it's the NEPA is going to be completed by the Watershed Center.
Okay.
And I can jump in here briefly for that too. Yeah, thank you for that, Ben. As far as I understand, there's some details to work out about what you expected, but the Watershed Center is happy to take lead with map production and anything else for the sake of the group's understanding of the project.
So the one thing that would be helpful to me, David, then would be some sort of general itinerary for the day. Usually the materials for these field tours are kind of produced up to the last minute. Obviously, it would be great to have them earlier, but the main thing is kind of the wheres and whens and kind of stops and a basic agenda or itinerary for the day would be useful, and sooner than later, because we usually like to try to get these things out a week in advance so that people can plan. But that's today. So,
yeah, sure.
So I can follow up with you and Randy potentially with an email after this meeting.
That'd be great. Randy is in the office, so once I'm done with some things, I can bounce over and let her know that that's coming. But to coordinate with you would be great.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so September 27th, Junction City project. October 4th, Big Ranch project. October 18th, which is our standing third Friday, is Hayfork project and pilot implementation. And then we have first for the Weaverville fuel break. Knowing that that's the day after Halloween, that makes things a little bit cumbersome for people that have youngsters. But I think what I wanted to bring to the group was, does that schedule for the next four field tours, which is happening basically over the next 6 weeks, is that a heavy lift, I guess, for us? Is that a heavy lift for the agencies? Do we think this is realistic? Any comments about that? Because that's quite a bit coming up.
I would
Yes.
I would say so far so good on our end, but you never know what kind of curveballs get thrown out there. But I'd say right now move forward as is.
Okay, very good. Arnold, do you have a comment?
Two questions. One, the first time you mentioned October 4th, it sounded quite tentative. And the second time you said that it sounded set. Is October 4th definite for Big Ranch? Or pretty
Well, that's,
definite?
I guess,
Or what?
so Ben, that sounds like that's what we're working towards, correct?
Correct.
So based on your comment, I'm gonna say yes, it's fairly well set. The last information that I saw was that it wasn't quite there yet, but based on based on this previous discussion, I'd say it's fairly well set, Arnold.
Okay. Can you
And
repeat
Ben,
the third date?
okay, so in order, next Friday, September 27th is Junction City. October 4th will be Big Ranch. October 18th will be Hayfork and pilot implementation. And then November 1st is the Weaverville Fuel Break, which is the partner-led NEPA that the RCD is taking on.
Thank you.
What about the South
And then-
Fork?
Yeah, and I was just going to mention the one that I hadn't had a chance to speak to yet was the South Fork Mountain Fuels reduction, and Kristen on that due to lack of staffing in progress towards getting that field tour together. Kristen, what are your thoughts on that at this point?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I'm working with the planners and Forrester for a map. So we're a little ways out yet from re-engaging on that. Like you mentioned, had folks out on fire assignments and such. So I will get back to you as soon as there's something meaningful to share, and then we can go from there.
Okay, sounds good.
Sounds like
So
springtime.
More that we missed. Me. Yeah, as it's South Fork Mountain, and like 4 of the next 6 Fridays basically have tours already assigned to them. That leaves October 11th and October 25th before we start pushing up against potential weather and whatnot. But Kristen, yeah, that would be great. Whatever whatever you're capable of doing, and then we'll see what we can schedule. Otherwise, yeah, it might end up having to push out to. Is that going to create any problems, Kristen, if it was to push out with progress?
No, not necessarily. And, like Ben mentioned, if they get thrown a curveball, maybe one of those other dates will open up. Right now I'm planning a field tour for Kimberly Baker for Rat Tail. We're trying to finalize a date, either the October 16th or 17th. So, I was going to talk about that when I get to my report out. But with your schedule of field trips, which I understand it's important to have, that structure there, it limits, other days. So if I can throw something together and it's not on one of those regular, excuse me, one of those regular scheduled Fridays, is that an option?
Is the group open to having the field tour on any specific day of the week? Or we've sort of fallen to Fridays just as the standard, but from my perspective, it doesn't have to be necessarily. What does the group think?
Better. I mean, I think you could just try and see who can show, come up with maybe a couple dates and see who can be there.
Okay.
Sounds good, Jerry. Okay, anything else on field tour planning? That's a pretty ambitious lineup. Okay, hearing no other comments, we'll jump to the next item, which is the wildfire camera update. Jerry, I think you might take a look at
I'll
this.
give a couple updates and then maybe Ben can step in too. So this is downriver. The Bald Hill camera is now online, usable. The one on Horse Mountain should be installed by the end of next week due to no longer needing permission from a private tower owner. I guess City of Eureka offered up a pole, so that'll be installed pretty quick. The Forest Service has requested another meeting on the Ironside camera, which is scheduled for October 2nd. And right now, I think there's three Forest Service staff. There'll be several representatives of the two tribes, the Comerico and Sonungwe tribes, and Digital Path and Travis from Velocity will be at that meeting. Do you have anything more on that one, Ben? Or did I cover it?
Nope, you covered that. I was just gonna give an update on the 6 cameras that Digital Path has moving forward.
Yeah, that's another one, is that the 6 PG&E cameras had to go to DC for out of Ben's office down to DC, and we're waiting for that to come back. And are they back?
Yeah, so just a quick update on those 6. The comments from the Washington office are back with us. They are requiring us to do a couple edits and use a new template for the permit. I've had my current special use staff kind of nibbling at that. The primary employee that was handling this permits has been on vacation the last 2 weeks. She returns Monday. So once she gets back in the office on Monday, it should be pretty quick for her to just tie in with our 2 special uses staff that have been working on updating those permits. Have her look them over real quick, and then it'll come down to the SO. Then it has to take a short trip to the regional office for review before it comes back to Rachel for Forest Supervisor signature. But it shouldn't take too long. And talking to Kevin, we should be able to get these things installed before our true winter weather sets in later this year. So things are looking promising still. Fingers crossed, but that stuff is moving forward, and we're getting really close to the end.
That's a perfect answer, because PG&E is kind of pushing to get those 6 cameras installed by the end of the year. And we know that before the end of the year, we're going to be bumping into snow. But sounds good. And then next time we'll have an update on the Ironside one, because we'll have had another meeting. That's what I have. Be glad to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Jerry. Anything for Jerry with regard to the cameras? That's all. That's good news, progress. So thank you. Minersville boat ramp is next on the agenda. As this is a rep committee issue typically, and I'm not really seeing anybody that was probably on last week's meeting here right now. I will go from my recollection. It sounded like Minersville is moving forward. I think the engineering, I guess, is completed 60% design on the boat ramp. Or actually, Joe, yes, you might have something for us. Then I'll backfill anything from last.
I was trying to nod along and support your comments. I think you're good to go with what you said. So just wanted to let you know that it is moving forward still, that the engineering staff and the contractor are working behind the scenes to make sure that those plans are taking into account the input from that February meeting, and that they've actually been meeting. They were meeting earlier this week working on it. It's, in the weeds of engineering land, but there is progress and it is moving forward. So I just wanted to share that out, that it's still moving along.
Excellent. Yeah, and one of the other, I guess, one of the other points that was made was that they are taking into consideration low water parking, which is kind of the whole point. You know, one of the biggest issues that is brought up frequently at the rec committee meetings is that this is meant to be a low water ramp, and that, you know, most people that are using that ramp now are parking, you know, just above water, basically, where it kind of flattens out. And initially that wasn't necessarily a consideration with the parking lot above the high water point, but being that it's anywhere from a mile, you know, half a mile to a mile to hike back up to the parking area, there was, you know, a push to consider low water parking as part of the design. And with that, the DBOW was interested in, you know, moving forward with that recommendation, but the Water Control Board had some stipulations with regard to that would require some level of mitigation because of the potential, you know, impacts of people parking, you know, below the high water mark. And so with that, there was a request for a CEQA to be done. And as the forest doesn't typically do a lot of CEQA, the RCD is basically going to work with the NRA to figure out how we could be a CEQA lead on that and potentially help with that process. So that's where it stands. I probably will need Joe. I'll probably want to be, and I mentioned this to Sarah last week when I saw her, but I need to connect with you guys about how that will potentially work. You know, how the funding might work on it, you know, and I mean, I think we're geared up for the potential to do that, as we have staff that can handle a lot of that, and a lot of partners that we're working with, such as David Colbeck at the Natural Resources Division. So, I mean, I think we have a fair bit of resources to be able to move forward with that relatively quickly. We just need to get some of the details worked out. So, when will Sarah be back?
Monday.
Okay. I'll try and reach out to her next week, and we'll see if we can't set up a time to talking a little bit more about how we can support you in that process and what that support will like.
Okay. And I know Sarah was you know, well versed in all what you just said. So I think that conversation will be ripe to happen. So that'd be great.
Perfect. Okay, will do. Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Any questions from the group about the progress on Minersville? Okay, hearing none. We're catching up here. We're up to BLM. Jennifer, we didn't really get a chance to hear from you last time, I think, because we went a little long.
Yes, that was true. I was wondering, I was like, oh no, we're behind schedule. We're going to end up with the same thing. So yeah, just a few things from BLM. We are so close to being finished with the NSIP. So the RMP, the protest resolution has been completed at our headquarters. We're waiting for them to post that document, and then we should be good to go to sign the record of decision and do the final posting of the RMP. So that we're hopeful is coming in the next couple of weeks. We did create a web map tool that will also be uploaded to our e-planning site, so you can go into the web mapper and actually look at the RMP planning decisions spatially. So we're excited about that because we realize how kind of large and potentially overwhelming the document itself is. And so we're hopeful that the public will be able to at least get some basic information about the decisions from the web mapper. So that will be posted and available online when the record of decision is signed. So almost there. Really for the office, we're hoping as the weather continues to change that we'll shift into more fuels work. So we've got a handful of piles to burn in Trinity County, as well as hoping to get a window to burn some broadcast units at our Reading Indian Creek project. So we shall see as the weather changes whether we find a window to do that. I did want to announce we have a new permanent state director for California BLM. Our previous state director retired. We had an acting in place for a while, but we did get I'll consider him a new old state director. Joe Stout, who was with us prior as the associate state director, actually left to the Forest Service as the El Dorado forest supervisor, but then returned to BLM as our state director earlier this month. So excited to have him on board, and he's been really supportive of our field office in the past. So exciting to see him back in place. And then really, I guess the only other thing for us is we are starting to work on layout for a timber project up on Jennings Ridge. So we've done some work up there previously. I've been here 12 years, so probably 9 years or so ago. We did a thinning project up there, but looking to build and continue on that. So when the time is right, we'll reach out to the collaborative and start thinking about a field trip up there. So our new forester has been kind of just working to get a feel for what potential layout might look like. So, and I think that's it for the BLM, unless there's questions.
Jen, roughly, for those of us that don't know, where's Jennings Ridge?
Oh, you're gonna ask
Where's
me?
that project?
I'll have to get you a map. I'll have to get you a map, Kelly.
Because I'm not even familiar with that one.
Town there?
I'll get a map and get it emailed to people.
Okay. Thank you. Bob, you have a question? Yeah, hand raised.
Yeah, Jennifer, at the risk of being in the wrong venue, we talked about a field tour of the Oregon timber sale after it was completed.
Oh, yes.
With a community.
Yes, we can try to get something on the schedule. Jess, the forester that was in charge of the Oregon Mountain project, is on detail to our state office as the salvage strike team lead for the state of California BLM. So I'll get with him and see what his schedule might look like to come back and get a tour scheduled.
And also, I didn't hear you mention burning there this fall. Are there plans to burn up there this fall or not?
No, not. No.
Clean up, pile burning.
I don't know. I know we've got piles multiple places across Trinity County, so I'm not sure if that's one of the ones that's on the docket or not.
Okay.
Bob Bethany might be able to speak to that when we do our report out for the RCD.
Yep.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Is there any other from BLM? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much for that. That's good news too. All good news too. Okay, we're up to U.S. Forest Service updates. Six Rivers, Kristen.
All right, everybody. So my report out should be fairly brief. We have some project work going on. We will be moving into some prescribed burning here in the fall on Mad Ridge and including the D70 timber sale area. So we'll have some pile burning in there, and then the August IRSC that we've been working on with the contractors for the past year or so in there, and then administrative piles. So a little bit. And then in the August IRSC, we have our fall reforestation effort that's going to occur the end of October, 1st of November, sort of weather dependent. The trees will get lifted probably and packed and shipped in the middle of October, again, once we get some rain. So these were trees, just kind of interesting. These were trees that the Klamath National Forest were unable to use, and they were 1.0 container stock that the Stone Nursery planted out as bare root. And so they're fairly large trees now. They have a 20 to 22 inch top, and we'll have a 10 inch, prune the roots to about 10 inches. So that is going to be sort of challenging. And there's some risks to survival. But I think we have a good plan in place to do the best that we can. There's also interest from a group at HSU for doing an application of biochar in this reforestation area and doing a study. So we're going to give that a try as well. That project is in conjunction with the Watershed Research and Training Center and the CCI grant in conjunction with the Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District. And that also included another contract that was awarded that's being managed by the Watershed Center for manual release. So we will have a sort of a fuels reduction component with our reforestation to release around existing planted trees and with this new reforest the fall plant. So that's been a good project for my junior forester, Raquel Thatcher, who is working her way through her silviculture certification. So happy about that. Additionally, in terms of, well, one other project I mentioned earlier, which most of it is in Humboldt County. However, it is in the Trinity landscape project area and was included in our joint chief submittal, is the rat tail vegetation project. And the public comment period closed on the 11th. We're working through a response to comments right now. And as I mentioned earlier, Larry, specifically to you, that Kimberly asked for a field trip. And so I haven't finalized the date just yet, but we're looking at probably the 16th or 17th of October. So I wanted to make sure that you knew about that. Then in terms of, oh, well, actually, let me mention this one more thing before I kind of go into stuff that we've applied for. The alert cameras, the fire management on the Six Rivers have been engaged with UC San Diego on those alert cameras as well. And I asked for a little update on that. And it sounds like the locations that on the forest, on the Six Rivers have been finalized and that they're working through that permit process. So in particular, the old Kettenpalm lookout, which is now located on Grizzly Peak. We did that when we did the August restoration EA. That Kettenpalm burned up, and so we've moved it over to Grizzly Peak. And then 8 Mile was another location. So I'm not exactly sure the final list. It was forest wide, so there was a location up on Gasky as well. So we're involved in that, and there is supposed to be a internal meeting, I think, with UC San Diego that I'm going to get an invite to. So hopefully the next meeting I'll have a little bit more thorough report out on that. And then we also received some extra funding, a watershed restoration action plan. It's EARL funds that took quite a while for the Washington office and the region to release to us. We will be getting that after October 1st. This was also going to be applied in the August IRSC footprint. This award was 1.4 million. And so we will be doing some continuing work in Trout Creek, fuels reduction with that contract there in support of the reforestation I previously mentioned. And then $1 million of that is to the priority roads IRSC. So Kyle Kaiser will be able to continue doing work in there. In particular, the hazard trees that were felled, it was very challenging for us to meet specifications for our residual fuel loading per the contract. And so this additional funding will help us get some of that material that's on the ground now managed, and pile burning, mastication, removal. So I'm thrilled about about getting that going, and that rolls into an existing contract already, so we don't have that a workload of trying to put together a new contract for this work. Mentioned the GNA a little bit earlier, and I have well, kudos to Bethany for working on that with David Colbeck as well. I know he had to run to another meeting, but the areas that we identified for the county road hazard tree expansion, only a small portion of that is within the footprint that the GNA covers. So we'll come up with a plan to work out on that to get that going. And then the remainder of it, I have some funding requests in to try to get some additional funding for that. And then since I mentioned Bethany, big thank you to her too for working on the Joint Chiefs submittal for this next round, 25 to 28. She did a great job getting that, and we had that getting that together, and we got that submitted to the region. We had the final submittal. The first submittal came back with just a few notes, so we just had a couple of things to tweak there, and then the final submittal went in. So that award is fairly the same as we've done for the last 3 rounds. And what is different, though, is that we've engaged with the Humboldt County RCD to, no, correction. Sorry, I'm in my car and there's a car alarm going off. Correction, NRCS office. So we've had Trinity County NRCS, and now Humboldt County NRCS is also going to be involved. So we've expanded that a little bit and added in a couple other little projects as well. And then I guess I'll just finish with staffing and hiring. So I think I mentioned in the notes before the written, because I missed the July meeting, that I was able to hire a GS11 fire planner. He is essentially a remote, but he's been a great addition and has gotten his feet under him really quick. So I'm very happy about that. I am down foresters. When I started this job few years ago, 1 year in there, I had 4 foresters, and now basically I just have one, Raquel, who I mentioned before. So that has caused some challenges to, moving out on new project proposals. But hopefully we'll find some ways to work around that, especially with our partners. The RCD and the Watershed Center have been, definitely very helpful in all the implementation type work. It's the planning that I need to expand on there a little bit. And then you all may or may not have heard with the situation of the additional hiring that we have been able to do, and then the budget as well. Going into fiscal year 25, the Forest Service has made the decision that we will not be hiring back any of our temporary 1039 employees and other staff that are in a permanent seasonal appointment, such as a 13 and 18 and 8, will be held to their tour and not extended. So that has some challenges. Some other hiring that we had expected, like I was supposed to be getting a resource assistant to fill in the Vice LeJean position for me, the NR specialist. That's been on hold since April. And I'm not sure when that's gonna release and I can get her in place. And then additionally, any sort of other permanent hiring is going to be focused on people that are already within the agency, as opposed to having new outside hires. So it's not pleasant, but we are working on some ways to get folks in those positions that we need moving forward. So that's what I had for you today. So I'll go ahead and stop there and see if there's any questions.
Great, thank you, Kristen. Any questions for Kristen? Okay, hearing none. That was great. Thank you so much. Let's see, we'll move right along to the National Recreation Area. Joe.
Yeah. So first of all, I just wanted to highlight or maybe touch on the fact that the last piece about the hiring piece that Kristen was all sharing, just so this group is fully aware, that is Forest Service wide. So that's not just a Six Rivers thing, but the Shasta Trinity is feeling the effects of that as well. And then the other projects we kind of discussed throughout. I don't have any substantial updates there, but I did want to take this opportunity for a go back when we had asked about the Trinity camps and going out for contract. I was able to get confirmation that that contract is currently being advertised, and the advertisement window closes on 9/26. So stand by, more movement there.
Great, thank you. Anything for Joe at the NRA? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate that. Let's see, Shasta Trinity, Ben.
Oh, I thought you were gonna skip me for a second. I was like, sweet. No, I'm just kidding. So for
No
some, what's that?
No such luck.
Yeah, just to you know, dovetail into what Kristen and Joe said about the budget and hiring. It's agency wide, and I guess we'll see in FY25 what those impacts will look like, not only internally but externally as well. So just something to keep in the back of your head. On the west side, folks are out clearing some units in Westside Plantation for some work to be accomplished. High and Palm should be going out for public comment here in the near future. One of our specialists are pretty close to buttoning up their report. So that's good. We're going to start nibbling into Big Ranch with a few field trips, which some of you are aware of already. But we're going to stagger the scoping period between that project and North Trinity County risk reduction project, so we're not scoping at the same time. So when you hear us say we're going to start staggering our program of work, we're not staggering project by project. We're just scaling when we go out for scoping, because it takes a little work to get that through, and then the folks that need to go through those comments are becoming fewer and fewer in between. So we're just trying to strategize on how we place work on folks' plate, knowing that people are already stretched. North Fork Coffee Creek Bridge replacement. That bridge was severely damaged during the River Complex fires from a few years ago. That NEPA was signed. Federal Highways has a contractor going in there and replacing that bridge. So that work should start summer of 2025, which is excellent because that bridge provides access to the north side of the Trinity Alps, and it provides access to the Pacific Crest Trail. Shasta Lake was able to get the Trinity Lake Multi-Use Trail NEPA signed a few weeks ago, so that's good. So that's going to connect a good segment of trails from Clark Springs down to Stewart's Fork area. So that was pretty cool to see some of that work being done, or we'll be seeing it implemented here. So that's cool on that recreational aspect. Let's see, I'm just trying to be quick here. Just looking through my notes. Hobo Gulch Road, if you weren't aware, we replaced a culvert on that road. So that road is fully operational again. And just dovetailing into Jen with the BLM and Kristen, we'll be starting to dive into prescribed fire season. So on the South Fork Management Unit, we are expecting to tackle quite a large acreage of piles. And then on the TRMU, we'll be looking at doing a mix of pile burning and understory burning across the Weaverville Basin area, and then elsewhere. So prescribed fire will be a huge lift this winter for our staff. Just in staffing updates, if you are not aware, Tim Ritchie is our new district fire management officer, our new chief 3, to replace Glenn Tigney, who is retiring at the end of the month. So congrats to Tim. Tim's a local, so super stoked to have him in that position. And then we're just trying to fill holes and gaps in our staffing with detailers. The unfortunate part of that, we can only we can only fill details from within Region 5, California. So the applicant pool is pretty slim since we can't go nationwide with that. Otherwise, other than that, folks are staying busy. We got a good vision ahead. We'll see how FY25 pans out, knowing that we can't hire temporaries. And then our permanent seasonal workforce will be tied to their tour of duties, whether 18 pay periods or 13 pay periods. So we're just going to be flexible and see what comes our way. End of report, Kelly.
Great, thanks, Ben. Any questions or comments for Ben on the Shasta T side of things? Okay, hearing none, I think you're off the hook, Ben. Thanks so much. Okay, before I might divert real quickly since we're doing agency updates. I'm wondering if Chris Cole from the NRCS might be able to give us a quick update.
I think the only update on the NRCS side is we've, finished our contract obligations as we're ending the fiscal year. And then I think Kristen already touched on, we submitted a joint chief. So looking forward to see how that goes. But yeah, that's all I have. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Chris. And Christine Jordan, anything from the Fish and Wildlife Service that you might want to add to for the good of the order?
Nothing in addition to what I sort of briefed on, or other than listing updates. So as folks know, the northwestern pond turtle is proposed for listing as a threatened species. We expect a listing decision on whether it is going to be listed or not warranted sometime in early 2025. And as we've worked with the Shasta Trinity as well as the Klamath and BLM, we've kept folks apprised of that. So that's really the only current listing update that I have. And then our project reviews again are going really well for the North Trinity project. We hope to mirror that with Big Ranch. We did issue a letter of concurrence on the High and Palm project a couple of months ago now. That was very good streamlining too. No owl habitat was going to be removed or downgraded. And we worked with Tara Jones and great ID team to modify changes in occupied sites and areas of high value habitat in order to get that to an insignificant and discountable. And we understand not every project is going to be that way. Sometimes there's going to be short-term adverse effects or long-term adverse effects, but we really appreciate all of the early involvement. And I've got the field dates on the calendar for collaborative field trips in October and November. So we hope to see you again.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Christine. Okay, we're pushing up on time. So we'll go into other partner updates at this point. Recreation Committee, again, not a lot of representation there. So besides what we talked about with regard to Minersville, the one thing that I would report out, unless Joe has something more to report with regard to recreation, I think that the Trinity Lake Trail, NEPA, was actually completed. So there was a good round of laughing about how now it can be named the Ross Molyneux Trail versus the Ross Molyneux Memorial Trail. So So that was a good bit of news. There was some discussion about the sticky wicket that's kind of held that up, which is the Stony Creek crossing. But we will be addressing that between the Watershed Center and potentially the RCD. There'll still be a desire to try to find some funding to do some engineering that might alleviate any issues that Caltrans has with having the trail go along one of their crossing fills there at that crossing. Anything else to add with regard to that, Joe?
No, I just think that always glad to see when documents, decision documents can get signed so that we can move out of planning phase and move into implementation phase. So.
Yep, that was big news. So we were excited that we got to hear about that last week. So very exciting stuff. Jen Mata says, also Garrett confirmed that we will be looking at trying to burn the piles on Organ Mountain project this winter, weather and prescription permitting. So yeah, I had heard something to that effect also. I think that the plan is to burn. There was an area outside the actual sale that had some overlap with the sale area. So that fuels reduction work that was done and the pile creation that was done for that fuels reduction project is what we're talking about on Organ Mountain. And that confirms what I thought I had heard, which was that they do intend to get some burning done up on those piles up there, because they're sizable hand piles. So thank you for that confirmation, Jennifer. Moving on to RCD, Bethany, how's your connection doing? Are you able to deliver or start us off?
How do I sound?
I can hear you.
Okay, it's been looking better. So if I get cut off, you're welcome to take over for me. I was going to update on Joint Chiefs, but I think we've got a good overview on that. I'm working with Eric and with Dylan to prepare for the November 1st field tour and start on a project initiation letter for the Weaverville fuel break. Oregon Mountain Timber Sale is complete, as Jen reported. The road decom is happening next week. And we've already been able to use some of the retained receipts from the sale to do some oak woodland restoration work on the parcel with our crews. So that's been good and successful. We've got a busy fall implementation window, including work on BLM Redding Indian Creek, Forest Service Lake Forest Plantations, Forest Service Petty John Project, and private land downriver and in Lewiston. And as I believe Kelly announced previously, I'm leaving the district in November, so this will likely be my last meeting. And I expect to see many of you on at least 2 field tours this fall. So not the last time you'll see me. And we hope to have my replacement in place before the next collaborative meeting. Dylan and Eric, who are on today, will also be primary representatives to the collaborative in the report.
Great. Thank you, Bethany. I'll add to that, as Dylan mentioned earlier. So we've hired Dylan Kirkley as our environmental compliance program manager to help with all the work that we currently have and all the coming work that we have with regard to both CEQA and NEPA and CEQA lead kind of requests that we're getting from various organizations such as the Watershed Center and the 5 Cs around the county. Eric Bruce is now in our forester position, and we currently have open watershed program manager position, which we hope to fill within the next few weeks, or well, at least start interviewing for within the next few weeks, as well as a conservation planner and fire safe council project coordinator. We got a lot going on with regard to that. As we're bumping up on time, I think I would probably go ahead and leave it at that for the RCD unless there's questions for Bethany or myself.
Just about a field tour for the Oregon project.
Yes, so they're currently working on, I mean, Bethany, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're doing some level of fuels reduction either this week or starting next week, dealing with some of the fuels reduction stuff that we needed to while the roads are still open. And then the roads will be getting closed. I think they're going to be buttoning up those roads within the next week or two. Is that right, Bethany?
Yeah, the fuels reduction component that we were doing along the roads is complete. That was all completed this week. And road decom begins on Monday. We're waiting for Jess to be back from his detail to schedule a end of sale meetup field tour.
Yeah, so we'll get that out as soon as we have devised a date on that. Anything else,
Do we
Bob?
know when Jess is due back?
October 1st, or I think he's back in the office like the 4th.
Thanks.
Very good. I wanted to, for the sake of the fact that I don't think we have anybody here from the Watershed Research and Training Center, I did want to, the big news from my perspective is they closed on acquiring the Trinity Headwaters property, 11,000 acres in the northernmost portion of the Trinity River watershed. Formerly Michigan and Cal lands is now in their possession. And my understanding is that they're working towards putting together a separate entity that will have its own board to manage and do oversight for management of those lands. But we're clearly working now with them on potential projects up there. We had some DOC funding, and we're looking at getting a programmatic for doing things like beaver dam analogs and wet meadow restoration and potentially sediment source reduction on the roads up there. So, so a lot of exciting opportunities with that acquisition. I had one other thing that crossed my mind, but now has left my mind. So I guess I'll leave it at that for now. So on to concluding business. We made a couple of attempts to find a suitable in-person venue or a hybrid in-person venue. And it was brought to our attention that perhaps the Board of Supervisors chamber would be a suitable location. So we're going to be looking into that for the November meeting. Assuming that everybody's still good with the idea of trying to begin to move in that direction. Any resistance to that from the group? Okay, hearing none, we'll make every effort to try to make that happen. And again, that would be, sorry, motorcycle going by. So that would be for the November 15th, the November 15th meeting, and it would be again hybrid. Yes, Bob. Oh, okay. Okay, we've pretty much gotten through our field tour planning. Onto agenda building, any specific topics that we don't have follow-ups on that people would like to see addressed for next meeting? Okay, hearing none, I guess it'll be somewhat business as usual for the next round. Obviously, we have some follow-ups that we'll be doing, but unless there's anything else for the good of the order, if there's anything else that others might want to report out, I think we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Great job of staying on schedule, Kelly.
What's that?
Great job of staying on schedule.
I brought it back around. I was 4 minutes off.
Nicely done.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for attending today. It was a good meeting and good reports out. And have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.